Welcome back to the table for the Friday, February 21, 2025 installment of Market Plus. Dan Hueber still with us. Dan, I'm looking through my notes here.
Yes.
Making sure I didn't miss anything. One thing that I did miss, kind of ran out of time, cotton.
Okay.
Cotton has been very, very low. There's this concern that cotton and rice acres are going to lose here very soon. Do you agree?
I agree. I mean, there's really, when you look at, it doesn't matter if it's domestic or if you look at the global picture, there's just nothing that looks good in the cotton market. So and again, why we continue, as much as they push for natural products and this type of thing, why we continue to lose demand in the cotton is kind of beyond me. But on the same token, it's there's no incentive to really, particularly versus what you can do with competing crops. And here, not that soybeans are, tremendous as far as looking at the new crop, but it's got to be a better alternative to cotton, particularly since cotton's a very expensive crop to produce.
And soybeans, almost every person that has sat in that chair for the last months on months have not been real optimistic about soybeans.
Well, I better change my tune.
Well, you're saying soybeans are even more positive than cotton right now.
Well, I think than cotton, certainly. And again, how much acreage you're going to shift, I can't say. And it's not that there is zero demand for cotton, but boy, as far as expanding acreage, very little incentive that I would see to do that. So,
do you see any scenario where beans can make a run and defend some acres, or is it really all going to corn this year?
Well, I there'll always be well, I shouldn't say always be. Yes, I think there's some scenarios from the financial side. We know it's a lot cheaper to produce an acre of soybeans. So if you're already financially stressed and your banker's putting pressure on you to make some changes, certainly, why not plant soybeans instead of corn? But I think if you have the wherewithal to plant the corn, particularly in the upper Midwest states, you're going to go to the corn at this point. So.
Well, then let's get into some questions about corn. Let's start with Mike in Iowa. We're going to answer this with corn on your mind. Mm-hmm. Are we getting to the top for old crop and also for new crop?
I would say yes and yes.
How about soybeans?
Soybeans as well. Soybeans have really struggled, but new crop soybeans, don't forget. We've actually pushed up to some nice levels on the new crop soybeans. This is the highest we've been since probably October of last year. So, and both categories, all three categories, I should say, yes, I think you want to reward it. And this is not to say that we get out in the summer months, we could have some weather issues that give us another round up. We could have some demand resurgence, but for a first quarter rally, and yes, a lot of times we think into March, before we really start pulling the trigger too heavily. I think it came a little bit earlier this year, so I think it's time to go ahead and reward it, and then we'll worry about it in the summer later.
Kick the can down the road. We're always doing that.
Yep.
Bradley, Nebraska has a pair of questions. Let's start with the first one. Okay. Why is there 15 cents of carry between the March and May corn contracts, but only 3 cents between May and July?
Well, probably partially because of what we're expecting as shipments over the months here ahead. I would think that's probably as much a transportation, weather related. We can't move as many things because of winter obstacles as we can, by the time we get into the spring. So that's I would tend to think that will begin to narrow here on all of them pretty quickly. So
we've talked to carry. Let's talk basis now.
Sure.
Bradley has another question. Are Mississippi River levels still low enough to increase freight costs and hurt river terminal basis levels? Could this record cold hinder river traffic?
Well, temporarily, certainly it will hinder traffic. Of course, I came across the Mississippi today, and there was quite a bit of ice still floating around on it. So, but here again, we're on the downhill slide of that one. If anything, we're going to be, as we look into the temperatures here in the next week and beyond, we're back well above freezing in most areas. So that should help free that up from where it's been. It's still probably more a processor market than anything. But, when you look at the shipments of corn, and granted, barge traffic has probably hindered that to a large extent. Last week we had a record for the year, a new record for the year, 1.6 million metric tons of corn moved out of the Gulf. So it's, the demand should be there if we can get it down there. But here again, it's if you have freight restrictions and that type of thing, that provides that hindrance into the basis levels.
Demand. Who's interested in our corn right now? Because Mexico had been a really good customer. They still seem to be buying.
Still is, yeah.
Are there other suitors
You know,
for our corn?
recently, probably some of the best demand has been the Far East. Japan, South Korea, Colombia is consistently a good buyer of corn. So yeah, I mean, there's been good demand for it. You know, and really the only other alternative in the world right now is Ukraine. And you know, we know all the problems that we have getting corn out of there, and of course limited crops. So it's, I mean, for the time being, we're the only game in town, at least until the South American corn becomes available, and that, you know, that's still weeks ahead. So
Yeah, and there weren't, since that's not as large of a crop as the first crop, that's not as big of a balance sheet on the world stage, right? And especially if it's delayed, the South American
you're talking
corn.
about Brazil in particular,
Yeah.
right? I mean, Argentina, you know, you're still looking at 46, 47 million metric ton crop there, and of course they tend to want to export that. Maybe a lot of it will go back into Brazil for that matter. But the Brazilian crop, yes, the planting of the second crop is significantly behind where it was a year ago. That window of opportunity closes pretty rapidly as you move into March. Not that if they don't have the financial incentive to do it, they'll kind of push the border on that. You know, which is of course the other part of the equation with the dollar. You know, the dollar's been backing off in relationship to most currencies, and of course a strong dollar is great for the Brazilian farmers. A weak dollar, not so much. So yes, they have even less incentive to try to really squeeze that second crop in. So again, I mean, that's a benefit for us, but not necessarily immediately, because it's still all about the immediacy of when the product hits the world market. And everybody knows that, you know, for the U.S. can be the storehouse for everyone else, which we've kind of tended to be that role.
Well, we haven't talked about wheat. I
Okay.
still have one question. Phil in Ontario wants to know.
Sure.
Wheat has quietly gained in price from last summer's post-harvest lows.
Yep.
The unusual extreme cold weather surely had to affect the U.S. wheat country. Is it time to price wheat now? Or should we wait, partially considering the ongoing geopolitics in the Black Sea region?
Well, first and foremost, yes, I think you should reward the rally. You know, and again, would I sell 100% out there? Probably not. The damage, you know, as we even spoke about in the earlier part of the show, that we really won't know that until we to move out a little bit further. Domestically, we have a very comfortable supply of wheat. I think we were back over 900 million maybe on that last estimate. You know, not a billion bushel carry out, but still a very comfortable supply of wheat. Yeah, if there is and again, I mean, everything's in flux, of course, with what's going to happen with Russia, Ukraine at this point in time. You know, not to mention even what the weather situation is in those countries. So yes, there could be some opportunities down the road, but I think this is a case if you have one in the hand versus two in the bush. You know, take the one in the hand. So.
Okay, let's talk Russia, Ukraine for a minute.
Sure.
Because if this story changes, which it looks like it did this week, that there's more U.S. support for Russia than Ukraine.
Sure.
What does that do for the global grain picture if, I'm not saying the U.S. picks a winner, but it appears that Russia gets more of what they were after than what you, does that change anything?
You know, certainly not enough to make a major shift in the world markets. You theoretically would maybe make shipping a little bit more affordable. Coming out of the Black Sea, a little less treacherous than it is right now, but that's probably more insurance rates and some freight rates than anything else. It doesn't change the production picture. You know, right now, yes. Well, I mean, we're kind of behind the eight ball on that one anyway. I mean, the winter wheat crop is going to emerge. I guess there could be some spring wheat in there. Boy, you know, to affect things this calendar year would seem pretty unlikely.
Okay. And then the other thing that I put my pin in, I got to pull it out
Okay.
because it's due back at the library desk. Let's talk about demand for U.S. corn. There's the push again for some states, some federal, E15 year-round.
Year-round,
Or
right.
is that enough generation of new demand for U.S. corn that can impact the market or be a market changer, a game changer?
You know, it's a nicety. And it's nice to say that, yes, the demand could be a little more steady on a year-round basis. I don't think it would be rise to the equation of being a game changer. You know, it's just a nice positive.
It helps.
Yeah.
It helps. Is there anything, and I think you said in the main show, let me see if I get this right, we haven't had any fundamental major change in any of these grains right now to make a significant.
Correct.
But things can happen and change.
Well, but they happen over years. You know, when you look at the ethanol situation, which was really the last major fundamental shift in U.S. agriculture, you know, from 2000 to 2008, yeah, we went from maybe 200 million corn used for ethanol to 3 billion. That's the kind of change it's going to take to really move us into that next super cycle, and I don't see where that is on the horizon here at this point in time.
You know what I do see?
What's that?
Is the end of our time.
Why? That's too bad.
It goes fast.
Yes, it does. Yes,
All
it
right.
does.
Dan, good to see you. Thank
Likewise,
you so very
thank
much.
you. Very good.
Dan Hueber, everyone. A reminder to get signed up for that Market to Market Insider newsletter. It's free. Go to markettomarket.org to sign up for that newsletter. Next week, we are going to take a look back at the 90s and the early aughts for this program. Lots of big stories to come. We'll also have the commodity market analysis from Sue Martin. Thanks for joining us. Have a great week.